mind. Some of us are trying to learn something here.
Regarded by many as a martyr, a mastermind, a hero, and perhaps the most important person ever to have walked these grounds.
Is it me? Sounds like me.
Which is why the history books echo with the name Sir Humphrey Bone.
Heavens! Why, I think she means...
Oh, it's falling off again!
Hello and welcome to Haunting Button House, a BBC Ghost podcast, and we are back for Series 3. I'm Luke, and I am joined by Tasha. Tasha, full name. How are you today?
I'm alright, thanks Luke. How are you?
I'm not bad. Energetic start for me, to be honest.
I know, I'm
quite
surprised.
Low-key.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, anyway. How have you been in the week that we've had off?
Not too bad. I don't think we've really done anything apart from work.
No. Well, we always say this. We need to stop saying apart from work.
Apart from work.
We need to have some more interesting and varied
This
adventures.
is my interesting and varied adventures, though.
Yeah, true.
That's the problem.
Well, were you going to...
I was going to just say we haven't really done anything apart from watch Eurovision.
We watched Eurovision, which was what I was going to mention as well.
Oh, right, okay.
It's the only thing that we've done. So that was our weekend. Interesting show, but I think it was. There's some good acts on there in the end. I think,
definitely.
Yeah.
The UK obviously didn't do.
No, we were crap, to be honest.
No, we weren't crap.
No, we
at
weren't
all.
crap, but we did bad.
Yeah, there's a difference there, isn't
yeah.
there? I definitely think it wasn't deserved.
No, I wasn't like a massive fan of the song, but I didn't think it deserved to be as low as it was.
No, definitely.
Compared to some of the other ones as well, but
definitely.
yeah, but
it's a shame.
Well, Switzerland next year. I wonder if, like, because we're talking about Eurovision like it's just something that everybody knows, but again, we do have a lot of American listeners. I wonder if many Americans know what Eurovision is.
Sorry to sound stupid, but has America ever been in Eurovision?
No.
So they haven't even got the option.
They can watch it,
because obviously
I think.
Australia is
Australia
in Eurovision, so it's not that much of a silly question.
I think you can watch it, but and like you can vote in it because you're part of that rest of the world block. But like, I don't think it's a big thing at all.
No.
So yeah, I don't know if anybody. If you don't know, Eurovision's like a singing contest. I say singing, like a music contest across all different. There's like 26 different countries from Europe and also Australia and Azerbaijan, which I don't know if that's in Europe either. But that's where I'm like, is that Asia or is that Europe? I don't know the full geography of it. But anyway, they all compete and have they'll get rated as to how good their song was. So when you're an established act like Ollie from years and years, it's a bit embarrassing when you come like 18th.
I do feel really sorry for him. It's definitely wasn't deserved. He did like way better, and I really like Ollie Alexander anyway.
But my act Croatia didn't
act
win. My act, yeah. my boys.
Are you their agent or something?
Well, maybe I can represent them next time. they don't go in it again, by the way, if you don't know anything about it. They're just in once and then anyway, I feel like we've kind of plumbed the depths of that tangent there, so maybe we should get on with the episode.
We've not got horses, mate.
All right.
We've got some feedback.
Oh yeah, I forget about that.
Yeah, how could you forget? So obviously we ended the series. We ended series 2 on the Christmas episode of series 2. So we had like a bit of feedback. People had some thoughts on it. So Caroline said, I think when Julian says he's in Brussels, he's straight up lying to his wife and is actually in some seedy establishment in London, which makes absolute sense. I didn't really swig on that.
It could, that could very well be true, to be honest.
She said, being in Brussels explains why he can't get home for Christmas. Whereas hanging out in London wouldn't wash as an excuse. And Caroline also said, I love the fact that Robin has clearly been asked by Pat to shout "It's Christmas" without having a clue why he does it, and he says like that. Pat moves off, totally thrilled by it, as are we, because it's She said, though I suspect most US viewers will have missed the joke entirely. I never even considered
Possibly,
that.
yeah. I don't imagine Slade's pretty big across Bond.
Well, they're big where we come from.
Well,
so. Yeah, and Caroline also said, I know a lot of people love this episode, but it's actually their least favourite of all.
Oh, wow.
Hang on. Let me just read that again. I know a lot of it, but it's actually my least favourite of all. Least favourite episode at all?
Oh, wow.
Or least favourite Christmas one?
I'm
Or
not
least
sure, yeah.
favourite episode of the
It
series?
it doesn't say exactly.
Caroline, you're going to have to clarify. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It has lots of good moments, but if I had to miss an episode out of a rerun, it would be it. And Caroline also said, sorry, my history corner rambled on so much last week. That's absolutely fine. To compensate, no history notes this time. So
we wanted a full breakdown of Christmas.
So yeah, let us know, because I'm interested to know if that's your least favourite episode of the whole series, or just that series, or just Christmas episodes.
Yeah.
So then we have Marianne, who said that this is one of their very favourite episodes. They love the backstory. Marianne said, I love the backstory on Julian, and he is continuing to recall his continuing recall of memories as he dealt with baby Nancy. Marianne said, we in the US don't have a yearly speech at Christmas from the president, or if we do, I've never been made aware of it. Because we did ask that, didn't we?
Yeah.
If there's been any...
Yeah, if there's any kind of like correspondence at Christmas from other world leaders, I guess, in their respective countries, but yeah, it's just us.
Just us.
Yeah.
Classic Britain, or classic UK.
Yeah.
Classic Commonwealth, should I say. Marianne said, I adored In the Bleak Midwinter. I had never heard of this tune before and have since found several good renditions online. It is a good one.
Always reminds me of Peaky Blinders.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah. It's less of a Christmas carol in Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
It's more, he recites it of kind of like death is a coming.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I wonder if it has two meanings.
Maybe, yeah. I always thought of it as maybe something they recited during the war, or like something like that. And sorry. Marianne also said, I got quite teary, and when Alison reached over and kissed Thomas's cheek, just lovely. Although I find Mike's sisters pretty awful. I love his dad, a chainsaw in his car trunk, and a side of beef aside. 4 people. And then Marianne said, 4 people from history I'd like to play Twister with. Okay. Tough call, but I'd probably choose John Lennon. Mm-hmm. Great. Obviously, that's a brilliant
and the other
choice.
3 Beatles.
Amelia Earhart.
Okay.
Mahatma Gandhi and Vincent van Gogh.
Okay, so some big hitters there.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't reckon Vincent van Gogh would play what's it?
Absolutely not.
Twister.
No.
Not his vibe.
No.
But you got to try.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you've summoned him back from the dead, like you're playing Twister.
And Alison also said that episode is their second favourite Christmas special. I'd never heard of that carol before, but it was a lovely moment when they all joined in. So it's definitely a hit, that one, isn't it? So, Luke, now we can get on with the episode.
Sorry. So this week we are looking at the first episode of Series 3, entitled The Bone Plot. It was written by Lawrence Rickard and directed by, new name, Nick Collette. So a new director. Do you know what? I should have probably looked at what they've done, but I'll try and find that out later because I don't have it to hand at the moment. Of what they've directed otherwise. Okay. But yeah, just so I'm not spoiling the flow of the episode. And the original air date was the 9th of August 2021.
So we're in the thick of COVID then.
Yes, yeah. There is a trivia note here. So through the entire series, they never mention COVID, but they don't take wedding bookings at all for the series, even though they had a successful wedding booking last series. So it's
That's
kind
interesting.
it kind of hints that it's going on. They just don't mention it.
I'm kind of glad that they don't mention it, because I think if they had have mentioned it, it wouldn't have made the show quite as timeless.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think.
And also, it's like, I think at the time as well, it was escapism. So you don't really want to be constantly reminded.
Absolutely. I think we've mentioned it before. Like, the show that comes to mind, as much as I love it, is Gavin and Stacey, where the music times the show.
Yeah.
Which in a way is a good thing, because when you watch it, you're like transported back to 2008, which is great. But I do think it does sort of time it a lot. And so I'm kind of glad that they didn't mention COVID, and that like it's sort of this pure.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. It's like it part of the real world, but removes it from the real world, so it's not affected by real world stuff.
It could be set at any time.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be set 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's still like sort of kept that.
I think the only thing that would age it now is like the clothes of the time, but I don't know if clothes have changed that much recently.
I don't. You mean for like living people?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I think Alison's got that kind of vintagey feel anyway. Like some of the jumpers that she wears are great. And like that's kind of her vibe, isn't it? So and Mike, I guess, is a bit more stylish or branded. I don't know. Like so maybe, but that I can't even in. Well, I mean, it's only been 2000. It's only been like 3 years.
Well, yeah.
But still, I don't feel like that would age them either.
Maybe in 50 years' time, it'll
or
look
even
really
in 10, 15 years' time.
Where everyone's wearing like
again, going back to Gavin and Stacey, like literally thinking of like the first episode when I'm reviewing a different show now. But when she's got her belt, and it's like absolute classic.
Like noughties
belt, this like circular. I think everyone had one of those. I definitely had multiple, and they're awful. They're horrible. And that, so I guess, I guess come back in 15 years' time, and we'll be still discussing ghosts probably.
We'll be like, they do change. It does look quite old now, but oh well, we'll see. I do have some other notes, but I'll just let them through. Oh, actually, there's one that we can start with. So the bone plot, not an actual real thing that happened, but it's based on the Babington plot of 1586, which was a plot to kill Queen Elizabeth I and instate Mary Queen of Scots. So basically the same thing, but a different name of the person who instigated it. So I'm beating... the history corner. I'm doing my own Caroline's history corner now. Yeah, I'm doing my own.
You've got competition.
I know. Mine was much shorter there, so it's not got many details. Okay, we should actually start reviewing the episode at this point. So just before we start, I did find out that Nick Collette also has directed Everyone Else Burns, which is a newer program which I've not really seen.
No, I've not even heard of it.
It's the one with Simon Bird in, and they're like a like devout Christian family or something like that. That
one you won a BAFTA for, just?
Possibly, yeah. No, that's a different show, I think. Oh, he's in this one. And there's some other stuff, Tracy Ullman show. But yeah, nothing like huge, I'd say. Well, I mean, it depends your definition of huge, I guess. But yeah, Ghosts is his, I'd say is his biggest credit. So we start and we see this... it's like an opening. It's a weird cinematic opening, actually, and it looks like it might be a flashback initially, where we see this man riding a horse delivering a letter to somebody, and we find out this is all just a documentary crew filming people in period costumes, quite high production documentary, I suppose, where everybody's like it's kind of like acting out something that would happen. So yeah, we cut to the actress in this who. They never say her name, but she's credited as being called Zara.
Okay.
So she gets the letter and then starts talking about something that happened in the house. All the ghosts and Alison are watching on. I made a note here that says, not dead. Not dead, the good ones never are. I'm pretty sure that's something Thomas says, but I cannot remember the full context. Maybe
it's because he was talking about Alison because obviously he fancied
Yeah,
this
yeah,
other woman.
yeah.
And then yeah.
I can't remember why. Anyway, yeah, I thought it was a funny. I thought it was a funny line, but not funny enough to remember apparently. And yeah, they mentioned that this documentary is called "History's Greatest Plots," and we realised that there was a coup that was apparently being plotted here. And Julian immediately springs into sort of defensive politician mode and says that it wasn't a coup against Thatcher. They were just having a discussion about her effectiveness, basically, and. Pat sort of mentioned it's not the 80s, it's something else. They sort of turn to Robin to see if he remembers the plot, and he's sort of oblivious to it all. Obviously, as the person who's lived here the longest, he should know, but I don't know, maybe he's. I think we do see later that he kind of misses all of it and just stumbles in right at the end. So yeah, we don't really get too much insight from Robin. At this point, the actor is sort of Zara. I put it down here as actor credited as Zara. Is attacked by, I'm not really sure what it is, a fly, a bee, a wasp, something like that.
Yeah. I think it's a fly. It's like as aggressive as a wasp.
Yeah. And she sort of bats it away. All the crew start laughing, and all of the ghosts start laughing as well. Apart from the captain, who's just sat there stoically, just not reacting to it at all. And Pat sort of mentions that he's never actually seen the captain laugh, to which he says that he finds a lot of things humorous. They go back to filming, they reset, and then we find that the most important person to this plot goes by the name of Sir Humphrey Bone. So we learn that this is Humphrey's full name. I also love that we get this dramatic pan of like as all the ghosts turn towards Humphrey and we see him from the legs down, and you know what's coming, but it's still like funny when it gets to his head and it's just off. And that's the intro. So yeah, any thoughts on anything there?
Don't put me on the spot.
It's a good stop point, I always think, for after the intro, but sometimes the intros in this are so short there's not a lot to say really about them, I guess. They kind of just, as most TV shows, I guess, just set up what's going to happen. So we see Alison and Mike are giving Zara a tour of the house, and she sort of marvels at all the history in the house. She even mentions it's like you can hear it, and then we get that sort of I say famous, or like that typical cut they do where it cuts to show all of the ghosts and they're all just loudly talking over one another as Alison kind of hints at them to shut up. Mike tries to awkwardly insert into the conversation that they've got a new B&B set up in the gatehouse, and he wants to sort of get them to somehow talk about that or mention it. Alison goes on to say that how she sort of acquired the house and say that she inherited it, and Zara does mention that that's interesting and she'd love to interview Alison about her family ties to the house on camera, which makes Alison visibly nervous straight away. Zara leaves and Mike convinces her that she needs to do this interview. She can promote Button House while she's on it, and in some way, and help lead some more business their way. And he suggests that they're going to make, I think he says a shirt at first with a logo on for her to wear. And he's sort of completely uninterested in Alison's like nervousness on camera, and he's just more worried about getting this logo and shirt done. We pan round and see Robin in the background mentioning all these ill portents of different things happening. I think he said there's an ill wind and all these kind of things, and they said something wicked this way comes, and then we immediately hear Barclay calling for his bitches. So that pretty much, it does feel like that's their version of an impending disaster when Barclay turns up. We see all the ghosts searching for Humphrey's head that was missing from the beginning, as they want to talk to him about this plot. Pat continues to grill the captain about how he doesn't laugh. And he says he does laugh. He says that actually him and Fanny constantly laughing at things or finding things humorous. I don't know exactly how they word it, but they said that they find the Mikado incredibly funny. Now, this is twice in a week that I've had a mention of the Mikado that I'd never heard of before.
I was going to say, I don't know what it is.
It's a play. I don't really know the story about it. I think it's like a dark comedy or something like that.
Okay.
It was mentioned on Inside Number 9 as well in the last episode, and I was like, weird that it's two separate things we watched. But yeah, they both kind of agree that the Mikado is very funny, but in a very dry sort of that turn of the century British way. Kitty finally finds Humphrey's head, and she sort of informs him that he's actually pretty famous, and he's a bit confused as to why, because he doesn't understand why. And they kind of mention that it relates all to the Catholic plot, and that's when he's sort of excited by the mention that he's famous, and as soon as they mention it's about the Catholic plot, he's like, oh, I don't really want to talk about this now. And you can tell that there's something behind it. And then Humphrey mentions that the circumstances around his death were complicated, and he eventually goes on to explain them. So we cue a flashback where we see somebody with a cleaver about to chop something. So we think, oh, this is quite I
Straight
think,
to the point.
Yeah. I think everybody knew it's not going to be that obvious, but I mean, I do like that they set it up. But it is just Humphrey with his head attached with this chopper, and he's chopping up some meat. His wife enters the room, who he has mentioned before is French, and he very awkwardly tries to make conversation with her.
Oh, I do feel sorry for him. He's trying really hard.
Humphrey's backstory in this is heartbreaking, because it's just of a person who is trying his very best, and he just cannot. He cannot get, even later on we see that she can speak English, just refuses to talk to him, and it's like, that's just mean.
I guess when we come round to it, she does think a lot of him, but
yeah,
we'll get to that.
Yeah. But yes, he tries to connect, but also there's some onus on his part, because he keeps saying that she should learn English, whereas he's made no attempt to learn French, I guess.
No, that's true.
So swings both ways. But she kind of implies that she doesn't want to learn English, but as I mentioned, we know that she can later on. He suggests the idea of something to do to entertain her, because she's clearly unhappy. And she sort of relents and says maybe a reading group. So he agrees to this, and they go along with that. And Humphrey seems happy that he's actually managed to do something for his wife.
Yeah.
We cut back to the present, and we see that Humphrey's ennui, I managed to squeeze that word in there, is interrupted by Pat suggesting jokes that could make the captain laugh. Pat completely spoiling the moment there. We see Barclay, who has arrived, and he's returning a champagne bucket, which is very nice of him. Alison informs him they don't own a champagne bucket, and we quickly find out this is just a ruse, basically, that he just wants to be nosy about the film crew.
Classic Bob.
Yeah, he's been
Always
told
wants in on the action, doesn't he?
basically anything to sort of get his face somewhere. He suggests that the film crew could benefit from his local knowledge, and instead of kind of Alison sort of suggests he's not really needed. He's just straight in there, and he's talking to the film crew about this to try and insert himself. As he walks over to them, he starts rubbing his chest, and Julian kind of mocks him, saying that he's looking to have signs of a heart attack, basically, because he said he knows all the signs. And I think I'm not going to... Do we do spoilers for later on in the series in this? I think we have.
Try not to.
Yeah. I won't mention it then.
Because I think if we do that, then we're going to...
Yeah.
Well, we don't know.
I can't remember if we have or not, but...
I'm sure most people have probably...
seen the full thing, yeah.
But anyway.
We'll try and keep it away from there. But anyway, He would know, let's just say. He quickly realizes, though, that this could be a problem, because if Barclay does have a heart attack and does die here and doesn't move on, he could potentially stay there as a ghost forever. Which he says that he needs to inform Alison, so goes off to tell her about this. We see Mike on the phone to his friend. Is it Obi?
Obi,
yeah. I wrote down Obi then. I was less confident after I'd written it. This is because he mentioned that he was gonna call him to have this thing designed for him. So he's talking to him. He agrees to design the logo, but he doesn't want to make it just a plain button house on white text on the black background. He wants to make it impressive. Which Mike sort of says, I don't care as long as you can do it by this time. You do what you want, which bodes well. We go back to Pat, and he's finishing his joke.
And the priest says, I know, that's why I painted it gold.
That is offensive to at least 5 different religions.
There are only 3 in it. Give over. It's just a harmless bit of fun. You haven't heard me jumbo jet joke yet. There's a nun, a gorilla, and a paedophile.
Do you mind? I'm bearing my soul here.
There, you're making this very slow and painful. Unlike his execution.
So we didn't get the setup for this joke, but we did get the punchline, and it seems to just offend everybody rather than make anyone laugh. I think, what does Fanny say that she...
said it is it offensive to 5 different languages, and you only mentioned 3.
3, yeah.
Not languages, religions.
Yeah. We go back to, we all see that they want to go back to Humphrey's story at this point, though. I did make a note, and she'd mentioned it earlier, but Mary seems to be envious of Humphrey's death, and to a degree later on to Pat's
weird,
death.
Isn't it?
I can understand,
they do say that's the worst way to go.
Yeah.
Or one of the worst ways to go. So maybe
that's the thing. Yeah, I imagine hers was quite traumatic. Whereas Humphrey literally didn't see it coming.
No.
It just happened. Sorry to spoil the later part of this episode. So we go back to the flashback. I did like in the flashback where they sort of go back to it, and when they come out of it, the camera spins to sort of orientate his head the right way, depending on which it is. So like when it's on its side, it's present, and when it's upright, it's in the past. So we see the book club assemble, and his wife, whose name's Sophie. Again, I don't know if that's mentioned at any point, but she's credited as Sophie.
Yeah, I think it might be mentioned. I think he calls her Sophie.
Oh yeah, possibly, yeah. So she's walking upstairs with the book club, and he awkwardly makes a joke. She's kind of sort of again not really interested in this, but she kind of does stop, pauses, and turns back, and she speaks to him in French. And thanks to Google Translate on the on iPhone, you can take a picture of the text and it translates it for you. So in this part, she says, "I would like to thank you for letting me do this. I feel a little better," is what she says. And then I think she tries to say in a French word that he could understand, and just says what he said earlier, which is joyeux. I think I'm going to absolutely butcher the French there. Any French speaking listeners can just absolutely piss themselves laughing at us there. I did. This is where I noted that I just found this story just really sad, because it's a couple who clearly do not love each other, who were forced together because of, back in the 1500s, it was like a familial. That's the word, isn't it? Obligation, where they're doing it for growing their houses or whatever. Humphrey cares, tries his best, but nothing they do will help this situation. Yet they can't get out of it. It's just really, really sad.
It is. I do feel really sorry for him.
Yeah. So then we see the book club. This is the first time we see Sophie actually speak English, and she's pretty fluent in English. So she's kind of pulled the wool over Humphrey's eyes.
I just think that's even worse.
Yeah.
To do that to him.
Yeah, it's me knowing that they could talk, yet she refuses to. Yeah.
But to a certain degree, obviously knowing what we know a bit later on, like you could see it as though she's sort of protecting him. So if what happened didn't happen, say, he could literally have pleaded ignorance. Like if he,
because
she can't. But I don't know. Maybe
I feel like in the Terror London, that's not going to make a difference.
That shit don't fly.
But yeah, we see that this book club isn't actually a book club. It's a group of Catholic conspirators in league with Queen Mary. And their plan ultimately is to get Queen Liz I killed. They say they're going to lure her to a chapel where the deed will be done. So yeah, this is the bone plot, I guess, that they were talking about.
I'm really bad with history, as we know. So did that actually happen?
Well,
I know that actually. Sorry, I know that there was a plot, but did they actually kill her? I'm not sure. Like
no, they
is that a
killed
stupid
her.
thing to say? Because your face, then you're like. What?
I guess not, no, because it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I wasn't alive.
Well, should have been. No, they didn't kill her. No, because who was the king after? I can't even remember. Genuinely can't remember now. No, she didn't have any kids, did she? Queen Elizabeth famously didn't have any kids.
No, so did it shift over?
Yeah, that's when he moved to the Stuarts, I think.
Ah.
See, this is GCSE, not even GCSE. What's the one before that?
SATs,
yeah, history. But yeah, so yeah, she didn't get killed. I don't know if Queen Mary got killed or not, got executed. Anyway, we're anticipating the history corner here on this one.
I'll have to wait for Caroline.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is their plan, is to get her killed in the chapel. And the conspirators kind of hint, does Humphrey know anything about this? They say, Sophie says no, and they all laugh and say that, he doesn't know anything. And kind of, they're laughing about his incompetence, I guess. But Sophie actually defends him.
Yeah.
And says that he's actually a good man. So she does think highly of him. I think his efforts are probably.
Yeah, she notes them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's a part of me that does think like maybe she is so cold towards him because she doesn't want to incriminate him. I know what you're saying, like it wouldn't hold up, but I suppose for his own integrity, like, and she probably, to a certain degree, she probably doesn't trust him.
Yeah, but yeah, potentially. I mean, he could just.
I think he probably would have done if. Well, I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, we see later his true colours where he wouldn't because he's willing to defend her. So
yeah, true.
Yeah, but she doesn't know that because they're not
doesn't.
spoken really.
Well, no.
I mean, that's again, there's many problems with this sort of marriage, but yeah. Anyway, they. So back in the present, we see Alison. Well, they've mentioned to Alison now that he looks like he's having a heart attack. I did like the bit where Julian kind of mentions that he'll be stuck here forever, and then she seemed uninterested that he'll be a ghost forever until he mentions, well, you're here as well, and you can see us. So she goes to speak to Barclay and asks if he's feeling well. And he mentions that he's never been better. He's actually he's on a bit of a health kick at the moment. He's done no exercise in 20 years and has just decided he's going to take up squash, to which Julian turns around and says, that'll do it. Which I noted, we maybe need to change our lifestyle and start doing some exercise.
Robin says, what is squash? I'm not taking up squash.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know where you'd go to. I guess a wall. I don't know.
There's like sports places all around, isn't there? Like a leisure centre.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's kind of a sport. I mean, the people who play squash now are going, what the hell? Kind of a sport. It is a sport, but it's just like you'd want to compete against the person. I suppose you can.
You play twos.
Yeah.
You play with someone else.
Play tennis though, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it. This is my ignorance of squash coming through. So yeah, any squash players out there, I am sorry. I don't mean to offend your sport. This is a man who's played five-a-side once in the last
20 years.
Yeah, I don't know. Last like 5 years, and I did about 5 minutes in one.
5 years.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, we played it a while ago, and then it was a long time ago.
I think it might be a bit longer than 5 years.
What's the year now?
We've been like
2018, probably. I reckon 2018 or 2017.
that's longer than 5 years.
Yeah, a bit longer. And I remember I did 5 minutes and felt like I was going to die. This is the last time I played football when I was like a teenager, and I could just run just endlessly. And I was like, what happened? Food and no exercise is what happened. Anyway, less about us and our lifestyle, more about ghosts. Alison goes to speak to Zara, and she kind of Zara mentions that they're going to interview Barclay because he does have this knowledge, and she says that she's found the perfect place for them to interview him, and it's just past the fence. And again, we cut and see Julian instructing him exactly where, because past the fence will be off the property and he won't be trapped in the house, I guess. Mike, elsewhere in the house, is walking past and he sees who he later calls Chegg Betwin. Which this is a recurring joke, which I found quite funny in this.
I wonder if that was a mispronunciation and it just kind of stuck at some point.
See, maybe, but I would have expected them to break if they said it like that and then just reset. So unless they just didn't cut or something like that,
or like it was like a mistake and they were like, let's keep that in.
Yeah, we need the script. That's what we need. Yeah. There's no official script book. We've looked for it, really, haven't we? Like if there's I've looked for like scripts,
because there's nothing in the book. We've got the book.
Yeah.
But well, I've not really looked at it because we thought we might do an episode on it.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, it's...
although a book review is very different to a film or a TV show.
I don't know how we would even do that.
Don't
hold us to it.
No, I think it'd have to be just a general overview of it, I think. But anyway, that's a different episode. But yeah, he calls him Chegg Betwin, which I liked. But he's practicing his interview that he's going to give later on. He bumps into Alison again. And Alison again is nervous. Doesn't want to do this interview, but he convinces her that she needs to do the interview because he doesn't want Barclay to be the face of Button House. At this point, Thomas interjects as Mike leaves. I like how he asks her if it's her oral skills that worry her, which she immediately is like, excuse me. I'll leave that one there. Thomas says that he could help Alison with her interview technique, and sort of implies that, his first appearance recorded was, he struggled at first, and he's referring to Button FM, which is what we saw in the first series, I think. Second series, maybe? I think it was the first. The one when the ghost hunters come.
Yes, yeah. I think it's the first series.
And we do see that he did flourish after a bit, and finally got into his groove. So maybe he can help her. We cut back to Pat and the other ghosts, and Fanny quite bluntly tells Pat that they don't actually find any of the other ghosts, Alison or Mike, because she says any of a present company, funny at all. That's why they're not laughing all the time, which is really mean, but also pretty on par.
So they give her seldom cause to laugh.
That's it, yeah. So Pat, sort of offended by this, says that, well, if they know what's the word? If they know best, then maybe they should show them how it's done. So he says this to Fanny and the captain, and they sort of say that they'll. I don't know if they say that they will find a way to do that, but they sort of agree that they're the funniest. We see Humphrey go back into the past, and he seems pretty oblivious to what's been going on in this room as all of the conspirators leave, and he sort of waves them off and goes in to tidy up, basically, moving the chairs around, which is a bit annoying. They didn't tidy up after they left. But anyway, these aren't too worried about the
You'd think he'd have someone to do that for.
Yeah. It's quite interesting that he does his own tidying. Yeah, but yeah, he tidies up, and as he picks up one of the books that he thinks they've left behind, a piece of paper falls out of it, explaining all of this plot.
I mean, very careless.
Yes.
What were they expecting?
If you are planning to kill a monarch,
I would definitely make sure all my paperwork was with me.
Yeah, there's a fire in the room. Just burn it after you. Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah. They just did not think this through.
They really didn't. Yeah.
Should I wish to kill? I would definitely.
Maybe not on record.
That was a joke.
Yeah, for anyone listening. We go back to the present and we see Alison and Thomas trying tongue twisters and voice exercises to get her ready for this interview. The way this is all filmed and like the pan around the room, I just thought of the King's Speech. Like I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a shot exactly like this in the King's Speech.
Have you tried the tongue twister that they?
I have not. No. Have you got them?
Well, I've got the one from this, and to be honest, now you mentioned the King's Speech, that's pretty bang on. It's exactly sort of like that. So, the butter burnt the butler, but the bacon bore the brunt. The butter burnt the butler, but the bacon bore the brunt. The butter burnt the butler, but the bacon bore the brunt.
I can't even remember that. The butter burnt the butler, and the bacon bore the brunt.
The butter burnt the butler, but the bacon bore the brunt. The butter burnt the butler, but the bacon bore the brunt.
This is how we get our podcast so long.
Just do that over and over again.
So yeah, they're trying all these different tongue twisters, voice exercises, and Thomas does also try to get in a line says about Alison being betrothed to him, and she sort of catches him halfway through, and he says, "Oh, it's worth a try." We go back to the captain, who has finished. He's kind of the same thing as Pat, where we just get the tail end of the joke. It seems a long and tedious joke, as no one finds it funny, apart from Fanny, who just agrees, very amusing. Which, I think that's their style of comedy, is just, I did find that funny, actually, rather than actually laughing. Kitty suggests that the funniest thing is the simplest thing that can to make other people laugh, and that is just other people laughing. And she says it's Pat says that it's contagious, to which Kitty sort of recalls in horror.
She says long words don't make something funny.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Kitty then tries to prove this by forcing a laugh, and everybody joins in, starts laughing, apart from the two stick up the bombs in the middle. And Robin pops his head in and is just confused as to what's going on at this point, as he sees them all laughing. We cut back to Mike, who gets a call from Obi, who says that I can't exactly remember what he says in this point, but basically he's taking this design far too seriously and is going pretty radical with what he's actually attempting to design. But Mike tells him to just get it done, basically, and get it to him. We come back to the ghosts and they're still laughing, apart from the two in the middle. They also stop and we go back to Humphrey's story again after this. We see another of the book clubs, and Humphrey at this point now confronts Sophie and asks her what she's sort of playing at, basically, that, this is dangerous. And just at this moment that this happens, the King's Guard arrive. So they've been let in on the plot, or something. Somebody's found out about this plot.
Probably carelessness of them leaving the paperwork around.
Exactly. And Sophie at this point says that they all need to run, they all need to escape, and they can escape through one of the back doors or something like that. But Humphrey at this point tells her to carry on, says he'll hold them off for as long as he can. I think, before this bit started, they said he's going to explain exactly how it happened, how he was killed. Yeah. So Sophie says that she needs to run. Humphrey says he's going to hold them off, which I've always really heroic and also really selfless, because he says to her, she's like about to leave, that, you didn't want this life, go and find a better one. Which he knows that by doing this, he's probably gonna be killed because of it. So, or potentially,
I
he is
suppose
a
he
good chance.
tries to
Yes,
not
yeah,
let that happen.
yeah. But yeah, and so we see the guards banging on the door, and we actually hear Zara giving the voiceover for this sort of scene, I guess, that's probably been reenacted. And they say that Humphrey was found and beheaded on the spot, or as I've written here, was behind on the spot. So apparently he can't spell beheaded. And he still had the orders, the conspiracy, the papers in his hand. And
I mean, that was unfortunate. Why did he not put the paper away?
Well, yes, yeah, that's true. The ghosts all, sort of. I think the captain salutes him. All the rest of the ghosts give him respect.
A lot of respect.
Yeah, that he was just so selfless in his action. Mary still really annoyed that everyone else's deaths were quick and painless. And then we actually see the true story as it cuts back to Humphrey as he's sort of not explain the truth to it, and we see Humphrey barricading the door and kind of goes, "Why am I doing this? What's happening?" And looks for a way to kind of defend himself. He pushes like a chest up amongst the door to stop them getting in. Tries to sort of find something to pick up. Sees some swords on above the mantelpiece of his fireplace. Tries to pull them off to sort of have something to fight with, but realizes that's not going to work. So that's the next best thing. He decides to hide. We see the guards, the two guards looking around the house for him, mentioning that they can't find him. I did notice one of the guards, I recognised him from, do you know Stafflet's Flats? Mm-hmm. He's the guy who he tries to sell the house to, then burns it down. Oh, really? And then, like, later on in the WhatsApp group, it's him. Apparently he's part of, like, a comedy duo I read somewhere.
Okay.
But, yeah. They're looking around the house, and they just say that they can't find him at this point. To be fair, the banter between these two is quite funny. That he says, "Oh, there's no sign of him." And he says, "It's always negative with you." So they sort of wander off, and we see Humphrey sort of descend from the chimney, as this is his hiding place. Which is good hiding place. Probably a bit hot if it's just been a fire in there, but you know, if you need to survive. But he climbs down and sort of realizes that he's got away with it. He could escape now, and proclaims that he loves the house and sort of bangs the chimney to sort of say how solid it is. And at that moment, the swords above him both swing down and behead him. Which was set up, I suppose, by him trying to pull the swords. Maybe that loosened it.
Them at the top.
This answers a question as well that we've probably not mentioned on it because obviously we knew how it went, but a lot of people said, why is Humphrey in his full dress and beheaded? Like if you were beheaded, publicly executed, you'd be wearing just a white shirt and stuff like that.
Of course, yeah.
But he's in full dress and garb. So yeah, this explains why. It's because it was an accident. It wasn't a public execution.
Wow, never ever even crossed my mind, why he wasn't. Because obviously I've seen shows where people have been beheaded.
Yeah.
Sounds weird, but
So you've been on the internet.
No, the thing that springs to mind, the first thing is that the gunpowder plot.
Yeah.
They're
I think
drawn and quartered.
I know it's that was a bit later, but I imagine it was still the same. When you got took for execution, you just wore a plain shirt, pretty much. Yeah.
I've never even considered that before. That's really interesting, actually.
Humphrey is beheaded, and
I suppose those guards weren't looking for him to kill him, were they? They were looking to capture him.
They would have probably captured him and just taken him back for
torture. He probably would have been killed
after,
but they weren't looking to kill him imminently.
I think we went to London Dungeon. We know what happens if you caught for that kind of stuff. And the two guards now find him and realise, oh, okay, well, nobody's around. We could probably just say we did that and take the credit for it. And alas, that's the story that then gets told through history, which is interesting that it kind of that saying history is written by the victors is kind of true here. It's
Yeah,
like there's
definitely.
nobody to contradict there.
Absolutely. And that just shows, well, yeah, because it's, yeah. I've got nothing to add to that, really. It's just really interesting because how can we trust it?
It does make you think, then you're about like
It
other
really
stuff that
does.
you know as fact through history of like how true is that? Like, or is it just the version that we've been told by somebody from 500 years ago, you know what I mean? Like, it is interesting thing to think about. I mean, it's probably not, I don't know, it's not going to change your life today if you found out that, I don't know.
It would be interesting though, because you don't know, like, we could come across something that means that the world as we know it or whatever wouldn't have been the same. And
Definitely true. But
very philosophical.
yeah. But yeah, so the guards take credit for this, and Humphrey kind of keeps this sort of part of the story to himself. Maybe out of embarrassment. I don't even know. It could be just that. We do see that Robin wanders through the house at this point after everything has happened and just sees him. Walks over and says to him if he's having a bad day, and then Humphrey screams. Which I guess you would. It's one thing to be a ghost. It's another to be a ghost where your head constantly falls off your body.
That
You
would
know
be
what
so annoying. I can't think of anything worse. Also, be met with Robin, because it's not like he looks like.
There's so many questions about stuff like this as well, because obviously this is probably, I'd argue they're the two oldest, Robin and so they're the two that have been there the longest. Who's been there since then? Has there been other? But we do know that there's like a ghost of another ghost that's been there that's moved on, but like that's the only one. Like there's probably so many others that aren't mentioned as well. Like I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. You'd think that, yeah.
Back in the present, we see that Mike tells Zara that Deg Chegwin, which is my favourite flub, shouldn't do the interview. He's got a bit of a bad rap and says that Alison can't wait to do it, to which she's a bit confused, as she said that she doesn't seem that interested in doing it. Thomas is continuing to coach Alison, who's annoyed with all of her ums, so he must absolutely hate this podcast, because I can't even count how many times I say when I listen back on the edit. I'm like, oh, God,
why?
When I first started doing podcasts, I was like, I'm going to cut out all that stuff, and I quickly found, no, don't do that. You'll be there forever, basically.
I think naturally people say so.
It'd make it sound awkward as well if you cut out those, because you'd just be an artificial. Anyway, that's beside the point. But anyway, Mike says that she's up next in the interview, and realizing that Mike hasn't informed Barclay that he's not doing the interview, she says that she should probably tell him to be a bit gentle with him, worried that something's going to trigger this heart attack. So outside, we see Mike finally get this jumper for Alison from Obey. Suspiciously, the Button House logo is wrapped around the side, which, I mean, you can see that there's going to be problems from this, but we'll sort of come across that later. And he also tells Zara that there's actually much better spots to film by the house, so he's not sure why she mentioned past the fence. We see Barclay continuing to practice his speech inside, and Julian pops his head through the wall, and it's hard to sort of fully describe it, but basically it appears that Barclay's talking to.
I think he's practicing his speech, and Julian thinks he's talking to him.
Yeah.
When he's saying like, "Oh, it's nice to be here."
Hello, it's nice. Yeah. It's nice to meet you, and all this stuff. Yeah. So he thinks that he can see him, and he's become a ghost. So Julian says that he needs to tell Alison about this straight away. Alison then comes into the room as Julian's just left, and says that she needs to speak to him. And she says that he seems unwell, and he says that he's raring to go, which seems an ill omen if we think what's going to happen. But we find out quite quickly after Alison tells him that he's not doing the interview. He says, "Oh, I've wore this new shirt for nothing." It's been making me hot and itchy all day. And then we find out that why he was itchy specifically on his chest was because he had a tag there that's been scratching him. So wasn't having a heart attack. He just bought a new shirt. Alison then finally goes to have her interview, walking across the field. Thomas keeps giving her more and more advice, and Alison sort of loses her cool with this, turns to him and just shouts at him, tells him that eloquently, I have to say, she eloquently can tell him that basically she doesn't need his advice. And at this moment, he kind of says how confident and well rehearsed that was, and he says that his work here is done. And she's sort of a bit bamboozled that this actually worked, and he's helped her with that. It's all for naught, though, because we'll see in a second how that pans out. So she's going into the interview, and she talks about how the house is from her dad's side, but her dad died when he was young, and her mother also passed away more recently, so she's the only living heir to this. So this also is another fan thing that I found, that people were asking where are Alison's parents and why does she not have any tie? Why do they not have any ties to the house? And this sort of answers that question.
Yeah.
But as she's been interviewed and given this sort of confident speech, all of the ghosts arrive and try to talk to her. Julian about Barclay and the others about the jokes and stuff like that. She can't really hear what the questions are being asked to her, so she's sort of struggling to concentrate and stumbles over her words a bit, but we only see a bit of this. We then cut to later on at night, where we see them all gathered around in the TV room, watching this interview, and we see her first part of the interview go really well. Everyone's like, and she mentions how, like, it's nice to feel it's part of the family and stuff like that. They're all happy. And then she sort of mentions this is the part where it starts to go wrong. And then, she just kind of keeps doing what I'm doing now, basically, and stopping and going. And the house has a Victorian wall with Victor and just keeps repeating herself and stuff like that, and just cannot get her words out. And she just kind of grimaces at that. And then we see the jumper as well. And Fanny asks an important question.
It's like having family all around me.
Oh,
Is it fair to say it's a building that...
I think this is
its
where
history?
I...
Well, the brick frontage is, it was a brick front that was added to what was a Tudor house.
What does that say?
And,
What is a butt hoe?
Adding that
Are you the
new
butt hoe?
brick? It was brick. It had a brick facade, but...
Oh,
my.
OB.
Which is now what we now see now on Button House.
So yeah, the jumper, as we expected, doesn't work out and just reads, as Fanny mentioned, butthole, which again is not great if you're trying to advertise. Julian also mentions that he has a cameo in this, and there's a part where Zara is talking and we see a vase in the background, and he sort of points at it and we see the vase slightly move, and they all I love all the ghosts cheer, which feels like an incredibly British thing when somebody does this minor thing, everyone's like way. And the documentary finally ends with a pun where they say that Humphrey really stuck his neck out for the cause, or something along those lines. And this actually makes Fanny and the captain burst out laughing in this point. And all of the rest of the ghosts are perplexed. Apparently Fanny and the captain like really dark puns. So that's the takeaway. And that's the end of the episode. So what do you think?
It's good. Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I think it's interesting to hear more about Humphrey. I think we don't see him that much. We're in series, we've gone through 2 series and we don't see him like we see the others.
Not really, no.
Obviously we know that Lawrence Rickard, who plays Humphrey, also plays Robin, and I do feel like we see Robin more than we see Humphrey.
I wonder if it's just easier to film those scenes.
Yeah, and I suppose to a certain degree they've got to pick one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely interesting to to hear more about Humphrey, and he's obviously got an interesting backstory as well, albeit a sad one. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I suppose none of the ghosts have good backstories.
Well, I suppose any death.
I suppose as well that's probably the reason why they lingered as well.
Well,
like if you had a good
unfinished business kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, his is particularly sad, I think. Yeah, I really like this episode, to be honest. I thought it had some really strong jokes throughout it, but the only thing I wasn't so keen on was the like wraparound plot of like the documentary. I didn't think that was that strong. It worked to try and get to the actual story of like Humphrey's background, but I thought it was a bit weak.
I disagree.
Yeah,
I think how else would...
Oh, I don't have a good replacement.
No. I think it's a good way of bringing the story to light, because I think it's a different way. Like, we haven't had that before.
Yeah.
Like where they're doing a documentary on the house, and obviously, with it being like a plot to kill a monarch, that's quite a big thing.
Yeah.
That they would do it. I think it's completely feasible and like an interesting sort of way, and it doesn't really take up that much of the episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can understand why people like it. I wasn't a big fan of it, but I did really like Humphrey's backstory, so I kind of like that more. And to get to that, I didn't mind it as much. It's funny that he's obviously the butt of many jokes just because he's a head, you know what I mean? Like, but to actually see him in real life as like quite a principled and quite chivalrous character, really, like it's interesting the like difference as like from this bumbling fool to this quite sweet man, I suppose. What would you rate this episode?
I've ummed and ahed between a 7 and an 8.
Okay.
I don't think it's quite an 8. So I'm going to go 7.5. 7.5. Yeah,
Okay,
I think that's
fair
what I'm going to go.
See, initially, when I wrote it down, I did write a 9, and then I did. And then I was looking at my like overall rank of all of them, and I was like, I don't know if it's like as good as the other 9. So I gave it an 8, but I'd say if you were like ranking all the 8s, this is like the top of an 8 for me.
Okay.
Like this is like I
even
thought
considering that you didn't like part of the plot. It's quite, part of the episode plot. I mean,
I didn't think it detracted from it enough where it made too much of a negative impact. It's nitpicking really more than anything. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. And so did 552 other people, as they kind of hit in between the middle of us. They gave it a 7.9 on IMDb. So I think respectable. I'd say good episode.
Welcome, spirits and spectres, to Tasha's Spooky Corner.
So, for this Tasha's Spooky Corner / segment / tales.
Tash Terrifying Tales. What was the?
Yeah, Tash. That's what someone's just. Whatever this bit's called. We're gonna look. So we've looked at the West Midlands. We've looked at the UK. And now we're going to look at the world.
Worldwide.
The world! So, completely open to suggestions. But this first place that we're going to look at, someone suggested, so Mary Ann suggested this place, and she's waited ever so patiently.
When did she suggest it?
Weeks ago.
Okay.
Maybe like... at the end of maybe series 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So at least a series.
Yeah, because so waited very patiently. So this place is in the US of A, and it's Waverly Hills Sanatorium. So apologies if I say anything, if I misread something. It's a lot of words actually, so
it is, to be fair.
So it's a lot of reading, and I'm not used to it. So The Waverly Hills Sanatorium is a former sanatorium located in the Waverly Hills neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky. In the early 1900s, Jefferson County was ravaged by an outbreak of tuberculosis known as the White Plague. Just going back, isn't it Jefferson County where they talk about saying things wrong just in the graduations, where they've been saying everyone's name like incorrectly?
In what's that?
Like there was like a recording of a graduation.
Oh, really?
And they said I still remember one, and it was like Elizabeth Bruce, and they were like Elisa Beta Brew or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like completely incorrect.
I've not seen that. Maybe you.
No, I'm sure it's Jefferson County University, if that exists.
We have to find this viral video then.
Mary Ann's going to know, so tell us. Okay, so outbreak of tuberculosis went like mental, went everywhere.
Yeah.
And it prompted the construction of a new hospital. The sanatorium opened in 1910 as a 2-storey facility able to accommodate between 40 and 50 tuberculosis patients. The hospital closed in 1961 due to the success of antibiotic drug streptomycin in lowering the needs of such a facility.
So, it's surprising because I always thought sanitariums were like am I saying it wrong? Is it sanitarium or sanitarium? I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it, to be honest.
Oh, it's a sanatorium here.
Yeah. I always thought they were like mental hospitals, if you know what I mean? Like mental institutions. I don't know if that's the correct word these days. But like, I always thought they were like those kind of things. Because I'm sure in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that's a sanatorium as well. But maybe it's just like a generic. It could just be
another name for a hospital.
Yeah.
It sounds an American name. So we would just say a hospital or a facility or something like that, whereas maybe they use sanatorium. So Waverly Hills Sanatorium has a reputation of one of the world's most haunted places. Prior to designation on the National Register of Historic Places, Waverly Hills had been left to decay. The abandoned hospital gained notoriety as a popular ghost hunting spot for local teens and lovers of the paranormal. Countless stories emerged of shadow people and ghostly children, cementing the building's sinister reputation. Though its doors have been closed to patients for more than half a century, it seems not all the occupants have left Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Treatments for tuberculosis were sometimes as bad as the disease itself. Some of the experiments that were conducted in search of a cure seem barbaric in today's standards, but others are now common practice. While the patients who survived the disease and treatments left Waverly Hills through the front door, many others left through what came to be known as the body chute. This enclosed tunnel This enclosed tunnel for the dead led from the hospital to the railroad tracks at the bottom of the hill. Using a motorised railing cable system, the bodies were lowered in secret to the waiting trains. This was done so that patients would not see how many were leaving the hospitals as corpses.
Well, that's grim.
By the late 1930s, tuberculosis had begun a decline around the world, and by 1943, new medicines had largely eradicated in the United States. A small jump in new cases did occur after World War II, and many soldiers returning from the war were housed at Waverly Hills. In 1961, Waverly Hills was closed down but was reopened a year later as Woodhaven Geriatric Sanatorium. There have been many rumours and stories told about patient mistreatment and unusual experiments during the years that the building was used as an old age home. Oh, that's awful.
I like how whenever we look at these places, it's like, oh, they probably have ghosts, and it's usually because it's like just generations of misery. Just like, it's not even one thing. It's like, oh, there was a murder in this place, or like with that, it's like, oh, all these people died of TB, then they closed it, then they reopened it, and all people were abused there, and it's like, why can't it just be a normal facility for 5 minutes?
Well, I am sorry. Do you want to find things to look at? Okay. The building and land were auctioned off and changed hands many times over the course of the next few decades. By 2001, Charles and Tina Mattingly purchased the property and began its restoration. The once stately building had been nearly destroyed by time, the elements and vandals. Volunteers soon had their encounters to add to the growing lore of Waverly Hills. Many reported unexplained slamming doors and sightings of a mysterious man in white drifting through the corridors. Others had run-ins with Timmy, a spectral boy who roams the hallways and likes to play ball. When the facility officially opened to the public for tours, visitors continued to corroborate these experiences. The hospital soon gained a reputation for being haunted, and stories began to circulate of resident ghosts like the little girl who was seen running up and down the third-floor solarium.
Yeah. Something to do with the sun, I guess.
Now, I think that maybe the solarium may have something to do with, I was reading that one of the cures that they thought would help somebody with tuberculosis was to somehow, don't ask me how, but I'll leave it to your imagination, is they would put UV rays inside their lungs. So I can only imagine.
Okay, yeah. I don't know how you would do that.
I think that many people didn't survive it. It was
Unless
like a
they
last
literally
resort.
cut their chest open and just let the rays hit it.
Potentially, because I think they knew that UV killed tuberculosis. Equally, I could have absolutely just made that up. But I'm sure that whilst reading about this place, that is what I read. So maybe that's something to do with that. So, little girl running up and down the third floor, the little boy who was spotted with a leather ball, and the hearse that appeared in the back of the building dropping off coffins, the woman with the bleeding wrists who cried for help, and there were others. Visitors were told of slamming doors, lights in the windows as if power was still running through the building, and strange sounds and eerie footsteps in empty rooms. Other legends told of a man in a white coat who was seen walking in the kitchen and the smell of cooking food that sometimes wafted through the room. Perhaps the greatest and most controversial legend of Waverly Hills was connected to the 5th floor of the building. The floor of the old hospital consisted of 2 nurses' stations, a pantry, a linen room, a medicine room, and 2 medium-sized rooms on both sides of the nurses' stations. One of these, room 502, is the subject of many rumours and legends, and just about every curiosity seeker who has broken into Waverly Hills over the years wanted to see it. This is where, according to the stories, people have seen shapes moving in the window, have heard disembodied voices, and if the legends are believed, have even jumped to their deaths.
Oh dear.
According to the stories, a nurse was found dead in room 502 in 1928. She had committed suicide by hanging herself from the light fixture. She was 29 years old at the time of her death, unmarried and pregnant. Her depression over the situation led her to take her own life. It's unknown how long she may have been hanging in this room before her body was discovered, and this would not be the only tragedy to occur with a connection to room 502. In 1932, another nurse who worked in the same room jumped from the roof patio and plunged several stories to her death. No one seems to know why she would have done this, but many have speculated that she may have actually been pushed over the edge. There are no records to indicate this, but rumours continue
Physically
to persist.
pushed or mentally pushed over the edge.
Maybe both, who knows.
What was this place called again?
Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
It sounds like there was a TV show, I can't remember when it was, called American Horror Story. And each series is about a different kind of place or whatever. But the second one's about this type of place, and it gets way weirder than because it's made even more fantastical. But a lot of the stuff that you read there genuinely sounds like some of the plot lines in.
Could have been.
So I wonder if they use that Waverly Hills Sanatorium. I'm just gonna have a quick check, but.
Am I saying it wrong? Sanatorium. It's because it's an O.
Oh yeah, sanatorium. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought it's it's a different spelling. That is sanitarium, so I'm getting it wrong anyway.
Are you thinking of a planetarium?
No, there is a sanitarium as well.
Are you thinking of what's that thing with the plants in? Terrarium.
A lot of terrariums out there.
I wonder what an area... Anyway.
American Horror Story. Some live Googling for you here. Apparently there was an episode of Supernatural set there as well. Do you remember that TV show, Supernatural?
No.
Well, it says it's kind of like related to it, but I don't know how similar it is. But anyway, yeah, it said it's his version of it. So, yeah, there we go.
So there we go. Thank you, Marianne, for suggesting that place. We've got found a few others from across a few haunted places, buildings from around the world. But as always, if you have anywhere that you think of, we're going to stick to maybe outside of the UK for this series, because we've done quite a few on the UK. Having said that, if you do think of anything that we've missed, any biggies, then definitely let us know. Thanks for listening. We love to hear what you think, and if you'd like to keep up to date with when new episodes of the podcast are released, you can follow us on our Instagram and our Facebook profile. Just search Haunting Button House. You can also get in touch via email at hauntingbuttonhouse@outlook.com.